Memphis, 1976. The king was in the middle of Can't Help Falling in Love when he noticed something strange in the crowd. A teenage boy held up a hand-painted sign. "My name is Elvis, too." The arena froze as Presley stopped singing, eyes locked on the boy who carried his name. Moments like this prove why Elvis wasn't just a singer. He was a force of humanity. Stick with us to see how this night unfolded, and drop a like if you believe music can unite generations. The night began like any other legendary Elvis. Concert's bright spotlights cutting through the dark rafters of the Memphis Coliseum. The air thick with perfume, cigarette smoke, and anticipation. Ushers shuffled programs, fans fanned themselves with ticket stubs, and the faint hiss of amplifiers set the stage. Halfway through the set, the king stood center stage, his white jumpsuit catching the light with every subtle move. Scarves draped around his neck, sweat glistened at his temples, but his voice rang steady as a bell. The crowd swayed, clapping in rhythm, some crying as he leaned into the ballad, and then it happened. From the third row, just left of center, a boy no older than 15 raised a crude cardboard sign. The letters were uneven, painted in red that bled into the edges of the paper. It read simply, "My name is Elvis too." Gasps rippled across the arena like a sudden draft of cold air. Presley's voice faltered just slightly, enough for the band to glance at one another in confusion. He lowered his microphone. For a man known for timing and precision, this was unthinkable. Elvis Presley did not pause. He did not miss cues. Yet here he stood, frozen mid-song, eyes narrowing as he peered through the spotlight haze. The boy's hands shook as he tried to steady the sign. You could almost hear the cardboard quiver against his knuckles. His face glowed pale in the harsh light, torn between fear and hope. The band hung on a single chord, guitars humming, cymbals trembling. Backup singers shifted uneasily. The silence deepened, broken only by the restless shuffle of thousands of feet in the stands. Presley took a half step forward. He shielded his eyes with one jeweled hand, squinting down at the boy. Whispers spread through the audience. Mothers clutched their children, unsure if they were witnessing a mistake or a miracle. The teenager lowered the sign slightly, as if second-guessing his boldness. But it was too late. The king had seen it. Micro-detail. Presley's lip curled not in disdain, but in a small, almost playful smirk. A gesture fans knew well, but here it carried weight. The kind that told everyone something was about to happen. The arena fell into absolute silence. It wasn't the hush of respect during a balladette, was sharper, heavier, a stillness charged with suspense. Then Presley let his microphone fall to his side. His gaze never left the boy. What would he do next? The boy blinked rapidly, shoulders tensed, as if bracing for embarrassment. A fatherly figure beside him, likely his dad, placed a steadying hand on his back. Every camera flash, every breath, every heartbeat in that Coliseum seemed to hinge on Presley's next move. The king tilted his head, one eyebrow raised. Slowly, deliberately, he adjusted his stance, the sequins on his jumpsuit sparking like tiny stars. He was no longer just performing a concert. He was entering a moment, and with that, he drew the crowd and the buoyant to a silence so deep it felt like the entire world had paused. Presley's lips parted as though to speak, but instead he let the silence stretch one more beat longer. The suspense was unbearable. Would he ignore it and keep singing or turn this night into something unforgettable? The silence held, Presley took another step toward the front of the stage, the heel of his white boots clicking faintly against the wooden riser. A faint squeal of feedback hummed through the speakers, quickly cut by a watchful sound engineer. The spotlight followed him, dust swirling in the beam. He leaned forward, shading his eyes against the floodlights. For a moment, he looked less like a superstar and more like a man trying to see through a foggy window. Then came the first words, low, steady, and playful. "Your name's Elvis, too." The microphone carried it across the arena. Thousands of fans erupted, half in laughter, half in awe. The moment had broken the tension but raised a new question. What would he do with it? The boy's jaw dropped. His face flushed red under the spotlight. He glanced to the side, almost as if searching for an escape route. But the crowd's roar pinned him in place. Witnesses recall Presley nodding slowly, eyes still locked on the boy. Not just a casual nod, was deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if acknowledging something greater than coincidence. The band stood frozen behind him. Guitarists clutched their instruments, waiting for a cue that never came. One backup singer mouthed to another, "What's happening?" The drummer twirled a stick nervously between his fingers. Trapped in limbo, the boy lowered his sign halfway, embarrassed by the attention. The cardboard sagged in his trembling hands. His father leaned toward him, whispering something no one else could hear. Maybe encouragement, maybe reassurance. Presley chuckled softly into the mic, the kind of laugh that traveled warm and easy. It rolled over the crowd, diffusing their nerves. Still, he didn't move on. He kept his eyes fixed on the boy. The tension returned. What now? For a split second, the boy looked like he might cry. His eyes watered, his shoulders stiffened, and his lips trembled. The audience noticed. A murmur swept through the rosum, cheering his courage, others urging him on with shouts of "Go on, son." Presley's expression softened, the smirk faded into something gentler, almost paternal. He raised his free hand, palm open, a gesture to calm the boy. The crowd quieted again, watching this silent exchange. Open loop, Elvis shifted his weight as though deciding between two paths: return to the song, or step off the script entirely. And then, a small but unmistakable signal. Presley glanced toward the edge of the stage where security stood. A knowing look passed between them. The guard straightened, waiting. The boy froze, his chest heaved. Did that look mean what everyone thought it meant? The arena buzzed with restless energy. Something was about to break. Presley leaned closer to the crowd, eyes never leaving the boy. His hand gripped the microphone stand as if ready to drop it. Would he keep the show rolling or make this night personal in a way no one would ever forget? The crowd buzzed like a hive ready to burst. Every eye tracked Presley's movements, waiting for his next decision. Then, without a word, he lifted one hand and motioned toward security. The arena gasped in unison. Mothers clutched children. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. The murmur rose into shouts of disbelief. Presley pointed directly at the boy. A guard leaned over the railing, gesturing for him to come forward. The boy's face went pale. His cardboard sign slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the floor. He hesitated, frozen in his seat. His father nudged him, whispering something urgent. The boy shook his head, terrified, then looked back up at the stage. Presley gave a single nod, slow, reassuring, almost commanding. Finally, the boy rose. His knees wobbled as he shuffled toward the aisle. Fans patted his back, cheered him on, even reached out as if to push him forward. Security cleared a path, their radios crackling faintly. At the base of the stage, the boy stopped. The stage lights cast harsh shadows across his face. He craned his neck upward, squinting at the towering figure above him, and then, something no one expected, Presley knelt down. The king of rock and roll, larger than life, lowered himself to meet the boy eye to eye. Sequins on his jumpsuit glimmered like shards of glass under the lights. He extended his hand. The boy reached out tentatively. Their hands met, small and trembling, against large and steady. Witnesses say his knuckles turned white against Presley's heavy rings. A hush rippled over the crowd, broken only by the crack of a camera flash. Presley smiled, a grin wide enough to reach the back rows. He leaned into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis meets Elvis." The arena exploded. The sound was deafening cheers, laughter, applause all at once. People leaped to their feet, some stomping on the bleachers, others screaming so loud the band had to cover their ears. The boy blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. Presley pulled him gently onto the stage. Security steadied him, but the king kept a firm hand on his shoulder. Micro detail. The boy's sneakers squeaked against the polished stage floor as he stepped into the spotlight. He looked down at his own shoes, then up at Presley's gleaming boots to worlds colliding. The band still hadn't resumed. Instruments hung silent, as if even the music itself waited for instruction. Presley didn't give any. He simply stood there with the boy, soaking in the reaction. His smile grew wider, his chest rising with deep, steady breaths, like he was savoring the electricity open loop. The crowd wondered, would Presley stop here, make it a quick joke, and send the boy back? Or was something bigger about to unfold? Presley leaned down again, whispered something into the boy's ear, and pointed toward the microphone stand. The audience surged forward, sensing the impossible. Was Elvis about to share his stage? The microphone stand gleamed under the spotlight, waiting. The boy stood frozen, his hands limp at his sides, staring at it like it was a mountain he could never climb. The arena's noise swelled, then dipped again as thousands sensed what was coming. Presley bent low, his lips close to the boy's ear. Witnesses later claimed he whispered, "You know this one." The boy gave the faintest nod, his throat too tight for words. Elvis chuckled softly, easing the tension. He straightened, gripped the mic, and lowered it toward the boy. The crowd roared its approval, a tidal wave of encouragement. The boy took a shaky step forward. His sneakers squeaked again on the polished floor. He opened his mouth. A single line of "Love Me Tender" slipped out, fragile, cracking, but clear. The arena erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, clapping in rhythm, urging him on. Cameras flashed, capturing the trembling teenager beside the king. Presley leaned in, his deep voice folding over the boy's thin one. "Love me tender, love me sweet." The duet rang out, uneven but achingly beautiful. Presley didn't overpower him. He guided him, softened his tone, wrapped the boy's broken notes in velvet harmony. Every eye in the building blurred with tears. Some fans covered their mouths in disbelief. Others swayed together, arms linked, swept up in the impossible sight. Elvis Presley, the icon, singing shoulder to shoulder with his namesake. Micro-detail. A single bead of sweat rolled down the boy's temple, catching the stage light like a tiny jewel. Presley noticed, gently wiped it away with a laugh, and the crowd roared even louder then. As the final line echoed, Presley pulled off a silk scarf from around his neck. It was white, damp with sweat, edged in silver thread. He draped it carefully, across the boy's shoulders. "Now you're official," he joked into the mic, grinning wide. The audience exploded again, a wall of sound that shook the rafters. The boy clutched the scarf, blinking rapidly, unable to speak. His father, in the third row, covered his face with both hands, overcome. For a moment, Presley stood back, simply looking at the boy. His smile softened, eyes crinkling, a mix of pride and tenderness. Then he turned back to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "give him a hand." The ovation was deafening. People stomped, screamed, whistled. The boy bowed awkwardly, scarf clutched to his chest. Presley gave him one last pat on the shoulder before motioning him toward the stage steps. But before he left, Presley stopped him. He leaned in again and whispered something no microphone caught. To this day, no one knows exactly what was said. Some say it was advice, others claim it was a blessing. Whatever it was, the boy smiled through his tears. The king gave a final salute, and the boy stepped carefully down the stairs, returning to the third row. The scarf glowed white against his shoulders. Fans patted his back as he passed, some reaching out just to brush the fabric. Back on stage, Presley wiped his brow, lifted his mic again, and prepared to resume the show. The band looked to him for the signal. The arena was still shaking from the shared emotion, but everyone sensed there was more to come. Presley shot one last glance toward the boy in the crowd. Then he turned to his manager at the side of the stage and mouthed two words: "Find him." The concert rolled on. Presley moved back into his set list, shifting from tender ballads to high-energy rockers. The band found their groove again, horns blaring, drums pounding, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. In the third row, the boy sat back down, still clutching the scarf around his shoulders. He didn't sing along anymore, he just stared at the stage, stunned, tears drying on his cheeks. Fans around him whispered, nudged, even asked to touch the scarf, but he hardly moved. Presley, though back in rhythm, seemed distracted. He glanced toward the boy more than once, his eyes scanning through the lights as if to be sure he was still there. Between songs, he leaned toward his manager, Colonel Parker, and according to some in the crew, he muttered, "Find that kid." The night ended in thunderous applause, scarves tossed into the crowd, and Presley's trademark bow. Fans poured into the streets of Memphis, buzzing about what they had seen. The story spread almost instantly. Elvis sang with a boy named Elvis. Newspapers caught wind of it. Local radio stations replayed the tale. By morning, it was all over town, but for the boy, the real story hadn't even started. According to later reports, a phone call came to his family just days after the concert. It was one of Presley's staff members. The instructions were simple. Be home next week. A package would arrive. The boy didn't sleep much that week. Every knock at the door jolted him awake. Every car slowing outside made him rush to the window. His mother told him not to get his hopes up, but his father seemed quietly convinced. Finally, it came. A plain cardboard box, delivered by hand. No fanfare, no cameras. Just a package with his name written neatly across the top. Inside, wrapped in soft tissue, was a guitar. A sunburst Gibson, gleaming under the living room light. Tucked beneath the strings was a folded note. Written in Presley's unmistakable scrawl, "There will always be room for another Elvis EP, the boys." Hands shook as he read it aloud. His parents stood frozen, speechless. He set the note carefully on the coffee table and strummed the guitar once, just a single chord. Raw and imperfect, but ringing with possibility. Word of the gift spread quietly through Memphis. Friends told friends, neighbors whispered. Some doubted it, saying it sounded too good to be true. But those who saw the guitar, those who held the note in their hands, never forgot. The boy kept both until the end of his life. The scarf, the guitar, the handwritten message, all treasured, all preserved. They became part of his family's story. Proof that a single night in 1976 had changed everything. And for Presley, it was another glimpse into his character. The king didn't just see crowds, he saw people. One boy with a trembling sign had stopped a concert cold, and Presley made sure that moment lasted a lifetime. Yet the legend didn't end with the package. What it meant, what people took away from that night would ripple far beyond a single family, turning into one of the most retold stories of Presley's kindness. News of the night traveled fast. Fans leaving the arena spoke of little else. Duet, the scarf, the boy who shared the king's name. By the next morning, Memphis coffee shops buzzed with the same question. Did you hear what Elvis did last night? Witnesses recalled how the moment changed the energy in the building. What began as silence turned into laughter, then into song, and finally into thunderous applause. People didn't just go home humming the music, they went home carrying it. Story, for many, it became proof of something they already believed. Presley's greatness wasn't only in his voice, but in his heart. He could have ignored the sign, kept the show moving, and no one would have faulted him. Instead, he stopped everything to lift up one boy, to remind thousands of strangers that kindness mattered more than perfection. The legend of the guitar only deepened that impression. Whether fans saw it firsthand or heard it secondhand, the effect was the same. Presley wasn't unreachable. He wasn't just the king on stage. He was a man who noticed, who gave, who cared. Decades later, people still retell the story as one of the clearest examples of Presley's humility. It has been told in fan clubs, passed around in interviews, and whispered at Graceland by those searching for traces of his humanity. Micro-detail. Some say you can still imagine that hush the sound of 15,000 breaths held at once before. The arena erupted in joy. A ripple of humanity carried through a single song. Open loop resolved. Imagine being that boy named after the king, embraced by the king himself. One moment of courage, one raised sign, and a legend was born. Sometimes greatness is not measured in records sold or stadiums filled, but in the way one person makes another feel seen. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes. Kindness can stop a room. And tell us in the comments, if you had one chance to meet your hero, what would you say?